To be honest, I didn't find the ATX cases lately attractive in terms of building inside the chassis and everything altogether. But honestly, this one also, honestly, second time, this one did surprise me quite nicely because, well, first you can remove both tempered glass and you can fit a huge GPU, and the installation process is quite easy and straightforward, even with the fans pre-installed here at the bottom. You can access all the ports at the bottom of the motherboard. This is ANTEC CX60 addressable RGB, which comes with 3 pre-installed fans, 2 reversed on the bottom, 120 at the back, regular. They're already pre-connected, so you just have to connect the SATA cable, and you do need to, which is interesting, you do need to connect the reset button to the connection at the back to get the possibility to synchronize it with the motherboard or control the addressable RGB with the press of a button here at the top. And of course, 5-volt strip-in addressable RGB to be able to actually synchronize it with the board. So yeah, all 3 cables need to be connected because I tried connecting the reset button to the motherboard. Reset does work, but in that sense, the RGB just stays white on the fans for some strange reason. That's all that I need to say about negative stuff. Because let's be honest, this case is really thought through. And I'm quite surprised actually, because we're having 2-side tempered glass. They're both on pegs, so you can remove both of those. It gives you easier installation of the GPU, definitely, because you can see how close it is to the front tempered glass. You have an easy installation of the AAO at the top. Just be careful for the EPS cables. You do need to reroute them somehow to get the access to, well, basically to get the possibility to place the AAO. It can support up to 240 AAO at the top, and there is no possibility to place a 280 at the top. You can go with 240 fans, which will give you then an option to go with an air cooler. At the back, it's quite interesting. It fits ATX power supply, and you still have loads of space for cabling, which is outstanding because you have loads of those extrusions to use zip ties to connect, to reorganize the cables. You have loads of space on the side as well with 2 Velcro ties, which Velcro straps, to reorganize the cables additionally. And from that side, you get the power on button reset or RGB LED control button. You get 3.5mm 4-pole jack for your microphone and audio headset, 2 USB 3.0 and 1 USB Type-C, which are already hanging on the side, and you just need to connect them and eventually use those Velcro straps to basically organize the cables to your liking. So what's there left to say except for the details about the chassis in general? So what we have right here is 5 expansion slots. You can place 1 3.5-inch hard drive or 3 2.5-inch SSDs. When we're talking about the fan configuration, top 2 120, bottom 2 120, rear 120, and the included fans, as already stated, you already know. Radiator support, top can go 240 or 120 and rear can go 120, but then if you go with rear 120, you can't go with the top 240, that's for sure. Maximum GPU length up to 325mm, maximum CPU cooler height 165, and cables included maximum power supply length is 240. The dimensions of the case, since we're talking about quite smaller chassis, you can expect 346, 275, 354 millimeters in depth, height, and height. The distance for the cable management, the clearance for the cable management. Behind the motherboard, you have 95 millimeters, which includes the top bracket where you can place the M2.5-inch SSDs or hard drives. And on the side, you have one more slot for 2.5-inch SSD, where the cable distance is 45 millimeters for cable organization. Now, this dual chamber design gives you a panoramic 270 view. We're having vertical cooling, which is basically a chimney effect, from the bottom to the top. But the GPU, if you're going with the 3.5 slot GPUs, and specifically if you have an ATX motherboard that has a lower PCI slot, like I do right here, the GPU is going to be really close to the fans, but that isn't a problem. And one more thing before we go to the benchmarks. The backside panel is fully perforated steel, so it kind of acts like a dust filter. On top, we have a magnetic dust filter. Now, since I mentioned this bottom part where the fans are really close to the GPU, usually doesn't make I wouldn't say that sense, but usually it isn't this effective. So when we go with the benchmark, say the 64 Extreme Edition, we're having Vortex LAM 240 addressable RGB, cooling down AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D. AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, CPU went up to 92 degrees, clock speed is 4775, and the GPU went up to 68. Now, the CPU, I think that's quite alright in terms of having a 240 AIO, cooling down the CPU, which usually goes at 87, 88, and the clock speed is, I would say, from 50 to 100 megahertz slower. GPU, you already know, the best scores are around 66, and the highest I got was 73, specifically for the RTX 4080 Gaming X Slim. But the Cinebench is also quite solid, I would say. Not good, not perfect, not outstanding, solid. So we're having 82.9 degrees thermals on the CPU with 10 runs. Basically, this is the average. And then the clock speed is 4893, which is definitely lower than we expected usually from this CPU, where the Cinebench score is 26,191. Usually what we can expect with the 240 in a much bigger case is better performance, without a doubt. But in this scenario where you have everything so tightly placed, I mean, fans towards the GPU really close to this front tempered glass, and then you have the AIO maybe collecting a bit hotter air from the GPU, if we're talking specifically with the benchmarks from AIDA 64. But then again, it's a smaller footprint. It's a well-designed chassis. The building process is really straightforward, and I'm quite satisfied in that sense, where you're just building. You're not figuring out anything. There is no hidden compartments, hidden things that you need to go in a certain order. It's just place, tie up the screws, and you're good to go. That's it. The only thing that confused me was the addressable RGB that didn't work immediately, because I really wanted to go with some type of a orange-ish color inside the build, just to go with some sort of an ANTEC colors. But yeah, in general, quite cool chassis. And if you definitely go with a smaller GPU and air cooler, you might even get a better performance, because, well, we had an air coolers that go up to 165, but are much better than 240, coming close to, in some scenarios, 360. You won't get that possibility here, since you don't have the front airflow and stuff like that, but yeah, you get the picture, right? So in those terms, this was ANTEC CX60 addressable RGB paired up with Vortex LAM 240 addressable RGB. And at the back, we have the HCG Platinum 1000 watts power supply powering up the whole system, and quite solid configuration in general. So if you're interested in this type of cube case, you can check out the links in the description for more information about it, price, and everything else that I didn't mention in general. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, click the notification bell, and I'll see you shortly in a new one. Thanks.